Welcome, golf fans, pursuers of knowledge and the almighty dollar. This is your golf guru bringing you the 2023 PGA Championship Millie Maker Preview Show. Yes, it's the 105th edition of the PGA Championship, the second major of the year, and I've got a ton of information to cover with you. Hence, I'm breaking this into two shows. This is going to be preview and bets. The other show I will have out here shortly will be all the analysis and picks for the Millie Maker. I tried to do one show, but it's going to be way too long. So I'm going to break it into two. And with that said, thank you for stopping by. Give me about, I'd say 45 minutes. We should get through this information. And then, like I said, check out the pick show that will come out a little later today. All right, with that said, let's go talk a little golf. Now, you're going to notice that I did not even have a recap for the Byron Nelson because literally I have so much to cover here at the PGA Oak Hill. But I will just say a couple things. As I tweeted out, I did have some you'll know for a first round leader, and I cashed it out early once his driver caved in. So that's another early cash out on me. Shame on me, but it is what it is. I didn't feel well that Sung You'll Know, and as you saw, he never did anything after the first round. He just kept losing strokes after that. And then the second, of course, is Jason Day winning again. It's been over 5 years. His first win was at the Byron Nelson. So kind of ironic. He gets his, I don't know, feels like his rebirth of his PGA career. So good on him. And that's it. That's going to be the recap for that because we've got a lot to talk about for this PGA Championship. So as I mentioned, I kind of held off. There was a few things that I wanted to get clarified. And I knew until we started to see some of the players talk about the course, I wasn't going to have the information. A lot of that was on the rough. So we're going to dive a bit into that. But of course, we're heading over to the East Coast, to Rochester, New York. We've had a few PGA championships, either A, played at this course without the redesign. But of course, like Bethpage Black, it does seem like the PGA does like to go to New York. Of course, we're talking about the Oak Hill Country Club, and it is specifically the East Course, built back in 1926. And it was one of our Midwest typical architects, Donald Ross, who's done a ton in the Midwest area, Michigan. We have a ton of Donald Ross courses. And then you've probably been hearing a ton about the redesign that was headed up by Andrew Green. We'll dive a little bit into that. It is a par 70 playing at just under 7,400 yards at 7,394. And you've got these fairways that are bent and POA. And then the big thing that I was trying to figure out, because it did not come across the superintendent sheet, is what is this rough like? Because I think that was going to be a crucial thing with how pretty tight these fairways are going to be. And what I did find out, it was 3 inches, but it is a crazy dense, thick, rough. And of course, as you've been watching anything, we'll touch on the weather. It's going to get a little wet out there on Saturday, Sunday, it looks like. And then also it's going to be a little chilly in the morning. So, and that rough is a fescue, bluegrass, ryegrass, POA. Like, it is just a thick mix. And I've got actually a picture to show you what some of these balls are doing when they hit this rough. We are on bent greens, totally new surface greens. We're going to touch a little bit on the greens a little more. We have a full player field of 156 players. It's broken into quite a few different areas. Typically, you have like 70 international. You've got like the top 50 world rankings. Of course, we've got those 20 PGA Club Pros that have qualified, which typically we don't have to worry about those guys. And if I remember right, cut goes to T70 in ties. That is what typically happens here at the Players Championship. And historically, the cut line falls somewhere between even. Back in the day where the PGA used to play a little easier, as we probably all know, it has been getting tougher and tougher, more like a U.S. Open. So typically the cut is going to be a plus, and up to +4 is what we've seen in the last couple events. Of course, you probably heard quite a bit that, the last event here was played in 2013, and it was a bit like RBC Heritage Harbortown or Colonial or even TPC Southwind, like a tighter woods design. Is kind of an old traditional course, but they've done a total revamp and they've taken a lot out. We're going to talk about that from a tree side. But back when Duffner won it, he shot 10 under. I would guess that this is going to probably be somewhere around single digits is where the winner is going to come in. Now, a little bit that's going to be on how the weather goes forward. As I mentioned, they've totally redesigned a lot of these greens. The original Donald Ross greens were covered up. They made some changes during the years. They try to take it back to the original Donald Ross. And so these are pretty small greens. Again, a bit like what we see at Harbortown, where they play the RBC Heritage at 4,500 square feet. Got a ton of sand, and these sand bunkers are not just your traditional sand bunkers. They are very deep. They have very steep edges. I've got some pictures of that we'll cover. So if you get in these things, especially around the greens or even out of the fairway, they are definitely penal. And put the acres of fairway on there because, like I said, I think when we were over at TPC Craig Ranch, I think we were like 35 to 38 acres of fairway, where, we are quite a bit less now. From my understanding, the fairways are a little wider than what they were in 2013, but also at that time there was a step cut rough. So what that means is, as we know, there's that kind of first cut, and then they had like gradually kind of mowed. So the further you got off the fairway, the deeper the rough you got in. But if you didn't get off too far, it wasn't too bad. That is not the case this year. In 2023, it's you've got the first cut and then you are in the thick of the rough. And a lot of players say, depending on the lie you get, which is typically bad, it is either a chip out, or if you are close enough, pretty much 8-iron and in, you can at least go for the green. I got water hazards as one, and it's this Allen Creek that winds through 6 holes, which most of it really shouldn't come into play, but definitely when it gets around the greens, there's some where almost there's a forced layup. So it can affect, but not too crazy. And then I'm expecting, again, I didn't get this from the superintendent, but what I understand is the greens to run pretty fast, around a 12 to 13 on the stem meter. Again, that's all going to be dependent on weather. But I've also heard back and forth that there's sub air, there's not sub air. The water that is coming, or I should say the rain, effect, we'll see that. We'll find out on Saturday, Sunday. Course defense, it's got these crazy tabletop greens, with, as mentioned, with these deep line bunkers, and then these walls of these bunkers, it's really heavy grass where they are intentionally trying to get it so if your ball works off, it is not running just right into they actually can get hung up on the wall of these bunkers, and I'll show you a little more about that. So again, if you get in that situation, it is going to be very tricky. So again, around the green is going to be huge. Then they've also got these, what they call like hummocks, which are pretty much moguls. So if you ski, it's just all these kind of mogul hills that are literally around the green. So let's say on a certain, you think that, well, I don't want to be in this trap, so I'm going to actually bail out left. Well, now you're in these hummocks, or in the fairway, they've got quite a few of them. And what can these do is, if you're going to get caught on these because they're in the rough, and now you're going to be either, have a crazy lie. Either it's going to be way below you, it's going to be way above you. It is going to make it also very tricky. Comparative to 2013, they removed hundreds and hundreds of these trees. You probably have heard this again if you've been watching the Golf Channel, but what it's done is kind of open up the visual line for off the tee and made the players kind of be a little more aggressive with their lines, but also knowing that if they do not hit that perfect line, that they're going to be in this heavy rough. And that was kind of what they wanted, a little more risk reward on that side. And we'll talk more about the weather. I've got that pulled, at least from yesterday. And again, I mentioned the rough is going to, again, from everything. And if you heard Fleetwood, Finau, Lowry, they all talked about it yesterday on the Golf Channel, that hitting fairways is a must. And if you don't, it could literally just be a chip out, or best case, if you get a decent lie, yes, if you have something less than like an 8-iron, you should be able to go for the green. All right, I've got more on the course, so we'll keep kind of going through that, but at least that gives you the quick summary. Now, I've done a ton of research, and you can kind of do your own, and I just wanted to point these things out. So if you go to the PGA Championship.com, you can literally walk hole by hole, because I didn't do the scorecard, because actually we didn't get one from the PGA Tour, because it is different, the PGA to PGA Tour, but you can go hole by hole and see the yardages. In short, there's, I believe, 6 long par 4s, and when I say that, it's 450 to 500 yards. There's a few of these very long par 3s. You've only got 2 par 5s, both over 600 yards. It's a beast. I'm not saying these guys can't manage it. Anytime we see a course we think is just going to be so difficult that, these guys won't even break par, that never really happened. But it's really going to come down to weather and how bad this rough is going to play. And then also, if you want to, there's a couple of different flyovers and talk about, you got the Friday. So if you go to YouTube, pull up either of these if you really want a good explanation and dive into this. But I've done all that work for you. So pretty much you should just sit back and let me hopefully help you with at least the player pool that I'm going to be looking at. And I'll be putting out that shortly. All right. So here is, again, when I was talking about the defense. Now you can't probably tell, but these are about 5 to 6 feet. This edge here, this rough is all grown up, and you can see this kind of odd. When I say a tabletop, it is literally a square. And if you do not hit this thing dead on, now they do give you a little runoff off the back of here, you're going to be in a bit of a shape. And like I said, if your ball does get stuck up here, it's even going to be worse, I believe, than being in the sand. Now, I talked about a ton of this restoration. So again, you can find out all about this, but they removed, at one time, I think they were saying they planted over 30,000 trees. I think it started to get a little out of hand. And so they actually, again, wanted to kind of update the course, and within this renovation, all tee box greens, They changed a few holes that, kind of happened. I think it was because of Lee Trevino, if I remember right. I shot, it was a pretty good score here that they were not happy about. Long story short, that's when they also started to say, hey, there's some things we need to do. And they actually kind of messed the course up and now, again, brought it back to the original Donald Ross with adding some length and some different tees and stuff like that. Again, you can kind of see one of those crazy greens that they were building in that renovation. And then this is what I was talking about. You're going to see and get a good understanding that, I would guess that's somewhere between 5 to 6 feet, depending where you're standing in this bunker. But literally what these guys are doing is kind of like pulling and unthatching this rough to allow it to grow out more and more. And you can kind of see it is gnarly. And if you get, again, stuck around the edge there, you are going to get held up in that. And then here's a good, understanding now. I watched they plop down, I think, 3 or 4 balls. I seen one that was not too bad of a lie. This one was, I think, about average. There was one where you couldn't even find the ball. I mean, it was literally, it's going to take a while. Good thing they got spotters. But this is what I'm trying to say is you are not hitting, a 5-iron anywhere towards the green out of that lie. You're definitely going to get grass in between the ball. That was the big thing, honestly, that I was trying to figure out is, and even you'll see my betting card is going to show you like when I understood what I thought this course was compared to the knowledge I had prior to what I know this course is going to play like now. It was a bit different. All right, I mentioned the weather. So again, this was from yesterday, but I was guessing it's holding up, and I'll go look at it again when I actually go through my picks. But right now, again, we have some winds blowing, as you see. Nothing too crazy. I guess the worst will be on Friday. But it's more about the early mornings are going to be pretty cold. And you've got rain right now looking at a Friday, Saturday. But again, 60s to 70s. Of course, living pretty much almost on the same equator of where this course is taking place, maybe a little above. The weather it's been about in this kind of temperature right now. And so it should be interesting. And like I said, I'll update that going forward. And then for all those Jordan Spieth questions, I mean, there's a lot. So now I've got quite a few topics about everything that's been, there's so much to talk about between the live stuff and you've got Jordan and we got Rory and JT. So I'm going to kind of touch on all those topics too. Michael Greller was there on site yesterday. Supposedly Jordan was landing, I think, last night to kind of come walk and, see the land, start hitting. And really a lot of it is for him to hit some shots out of the rough to see how that wrist is going to react. My thoughts are, even if he gives it a go, I think if the wrist is injured, like what they're saying, it is going to be very difficult for him to hit the shots. I think he's going off like 40-1 from an odds perspective. Of course, he was playing amazing golf, and then I think he got hurt actually after round 2, or maybe it was round 3 of the Wells Fargo, and things have kind of went south since then. So I just wanted to give you the update that he is going to be on property. It's a 50-50 chance that he plays. From a DFS perspective, definitely, depending on where the ownership comes in, I think everybody's going to be really cautious. I mean, if you're just taking flyers and hoping that all works out and the wrist never has a problem, but typically if you play golf and you understand of 4 days hitting out of the stuff that he's going to be hitting out of, the odds that something is not going to happen to re-injure or re-flare up that wrist, pretty slim. And then, of course, now we got some of the live conversations. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. In short, of course, DJ just won their recent event. I believe Cam Smith came in second. I don't know if they're in a playoff. I don't watch it, but I just make sure that I have the information. I also think it's kind of funny if you've watched the live events and their trophies all look identical to what he's holding there, which you would think, hey, we could switch it up, make them look a little different, but neither here or there. So DJ won. Of course, he won last year on the live tour. Do with that, which I have no clue what the Tulsa course is like from how hard it is. We know what the field is. It's a minimal field. Now, I'm not saying they're not playing against some guys that are very good at the game of golf. I'm just saying when you have a difference of 150, professionals that are all top class playing against and then having a cut and all that, and it's 4 days, I still take this, for me, at kind of a grain. Now, again, DJ could do very well here, but what we saw, at least at the Masters, wouldn't, really push you in that direction. And then, of course, you got Taylor Gooch, again, with that same kind of crappy-looking trophy, won back-to-back tournaments, and I think one was, in Aussie, and one was, over in Asia, if I remember correctly. So Gooch was on a hot streak. I think he ended up in like 35th or something like that, so, of course, fell back at the Tulsa one. But funny enough, Gooch's game and DJ, from what we knew in the PGA world, I actually wouldn't mind Gooch. He was always a guy that I looked to whenever a lot of the shots were coming out, 175 to 200, 200 plus. He did that very well. The driver could get a little wayward, and I would always put his short game and putter kind of at like average to above average at the time. So And then, of course, we all know DJ. You kind of know what his skill set is. I just don't know where. I'm not saying he's not going to be up for majors, but I've not really come to a conclusion on what I'm going to do with the live guys yet, but we'll talk more about that on the pick side. And then last thing of note, of course, Sun JM after Quail, after the Wells Fargo, went and flew to Korea and went and won a KPGA Tour event. I have no clue what it's called, but has flown back, and I believe he's maybe on property today. I don't think he got until, either Tuesday or Monday. And, so he's coming off a win, but, we know this guy loves to play. He could have just played at the Byron Nelson, but I guess, I don't know if it was backed by his CJ Logistics. Of course, a lot of those Asian guys, are backed by CJ Logistics. So maybe that was it, some obligations, but yeah, you got to look at that both ways, right? He's in good form. I don't know what that field looked like. Again, I put it maybe against a Live Tour event, maybe even worse, to be honest, but on the side note, hit the ball well, which we even saw previously. So something to think about. Just, are you worried about the jet lag? All right, so I think that gets you up on at least all the topics that are kind of swirling around. You've got my as much as I know. And now let's kind of look at where I fell on the player profile. So what I finally, and this one took a while to figure out. This bounced around a little bit. But stroke gain analysis, where I'm going to be kind of landing is, and actually I've updated this. So I had driving distance with fairways. Technically what that means is off the tee. And so I just went with off the tee. And then what I did is then I doubled down again on fairways, because the more and more I saw what this rough is going to do, I really need guys that are in the fairway, almost to the point of where I might even fall to good drives and more of the plotters. So where I'm going to be ending up, and this is kind of very long-winded, is probably a split of building lineups that are going to, because we don't know if the Bombers are going to be able to hit it far enough and have a low enough wedge, a bit like what we saw back at Winged Foot, if that can be the case, or is this going to kind of position itself that you have to hit a ton of fairways, no matter if it's 280, is way better than if you get off in this rough where it's almost a chip out every time. So that we don't know yet, but we will have to figure out as we go through. And I told you I'll probably end up kind of building my lineups a bit of both. Of course, ball striking is always needed approach. I think around the green and that sand saves is going to show up quite a bit, a lot, I should say. So, it's something I'm definitely looking at. I'm doing a ton of analysis on the putting side when we get into the picks. So I'm going to show you that in the other show. But of course, we're looking for guys that can putt on bent, but really looking at guys that can make those 10 footers. Typically we see in majors, and what I can see here, you're going to have quite a bit of those, because, if you can stay on these greens, you're either going to have a long distance, or there's going to be a lot of chipping to get on. Scrambling is going to come into play. Proximity of pin, right now I'm at 200 plus. I think you could also definitely make an argument of that 175 to 200. I know I saw the information that Andy Locke put out, went and walked the course, did his analysis. I looked at that to try to get an understanding. Of course, it's not too hard to even take a scorecard. I don't think you even need to go on property, to be honest, to see that these guys did it on average 300. This is what you're going to have on most of these holes if you're hitting the fairway. And then as always, we're in a major and it's a tough course, and we're not looking at guys to birdie. We're looking at guys to make pars, have the occasional birdie, but of course the blow-ups, bogeys and double bogeys, we want to make sure we don't have. So that's kind of where my player profile fits. And then with all that said, here's the analysis and the models that I did run for you guys and what I've done so far. So recent form, what we got here, we're looking at the last 24 rounds on this one. I also did a 12 rounds for you. So if you do the math, that's 6 tournaments. And I mentioned I went off the tee, which again takes distance, because this course and a lot of these holes are long. You still need to have distance. That's why I did not just go with pure good drives. But off the tee takes distance, and fairways combines that together. That's at 15%. Then you're going to notice, so I've got fairways gained at 15%. So literally, if you kind of split this in half, that's almost like 20% on fairways gained, because again, that calculation takes distance and hitting the fairway for getting off the tee. Of course, approach, I got that at 20%, that proximity at 200 plus, which I think that Andy Lack stated, like 22% of the time. He thinks the pro shots, I kind of agreed. I thought, I had 175, 200, but it was just too many stroke gain categories, which if you do that, it starts to kind of vanilla everything else. So I landed on the 200 plus. I got ball striking at 10, around the green at 5, sand stays at 5. On this one, I got putting at 10 to 15 foot range at 10, scrambling at 5, and bogey avoidance at 5%. That was the model that I kind of ran on to get you guys, and even for me for custom stats. And off the bat, you get Scotty Scheffler, of course. I didn't really mention him at the Byron Nelson, but it was crazy that he came out, right? Shot was 600 after 5 holes, something like that, maybe a 600 after 7 holes. And it looked like he was going on a tear, and then he missed a couple easy putts, one to say par, He had a 3-putt on a par 3 that he was on. If he would have just made, like he could have literally been 9 under after 9 holes and easily shot a 59 that first opening round. And then, of course, he had a dud round on Saturday, shooting even par, where other guys are shooting anywhere between 5 to 8 under. And that's what kind of held him back. And he's still, even with all that on Sunday, I don't know if he would end up second or third, but he had a really good chance to win that thing. Of course, Jason Day pulled it out. All right, so Scotty Scheffler still in great form. The putter, and if you've been watching golf, has been bad, under 5 feet. Anything, and I've said this a long time. I mean, since I was watching Scotty. If you go back to any of my shows back in the days before he actually won a tournament, I'd always say I'd rather have Scotty Scheffler 15 to 20 feet out than I would 3 feet. And if you guys, of course, with Will Z, it's the same thing. And of course, Will Z is not playing right now, but if you watch Will Z, putter swing, I think the mind, everything is just loosened on the longer putts, and he looks like a fluid stroke. And then you get him in the 3 foot, and it's almost like yips. Now, I'm not saying Scotty's yips, but they were showing, he's mishitting the putt, catching in the inside of the putter a lot, and that's hence why it's going left on quite a few of those. So, but as we all know, Scotty Scheffler, if he gets hot with the putter, it's pretty much game over. You got Tony Finau, of course, at 25 to 1, a recent winner at the Mexico Open with Jon Rahm chasing him. You got Xander, who's, the driver's back. Everything else is spot on, so I really like Xander in this event. Of course, Patrick Cantlay, I've always told you guys, whenever we got bent greens, Patrick Cantlay should definitely be a threat, even though the Masters, it did not work out so much for him. But I still like him. And if you look at where he's done his damage over and over, it's bent greens. You got Terrell Hatton, who I believe the odds have actually gotten better for him. This is probably a day or two old on this. But also, of course, just doing amazing in the elevated events, except for the Genesis is the only one. Everybody kept saying, every elevated event, he's top 5. Well, he didn't do that at the Genesis, which was an elevated event. But other than that, he's done amazing. Hideki, side note, of course, we were worried about the injuries. The driver right now is going a little wayward for Hideki. You can kind of see that here, where he used to be a little more elite with the driver. And rumor was, I believe, Sunday morning he was out testing again, which he does this, testing all kinds of different shafts and heads with the driver because he's still not happy. He's kind of got the two-way miss going. So that's the only thing that makes me a little nervous about Hideki. Jon Rahm, of course, just an amazing form. There's really nothing I can say bad, except, again, he could have his moments also with the putter. Colin Morikawa, like I said, I've thrown him right into the Griot camp and the Hovlands. And, I think Hovland, honestly, is a better short game than Colin Morikawa. That's my own personal. Now you're going to say, well, he's got 2 majors. Well, yeah, but let's go look at where he had those 2 majors. One was a home course. I don't think was very, very difficult at all. He had no fans at Harding Park. And then if you go to that Open that he won, literally that was any course that I play on a Sunday, no wind, dead, fast. If I remember right, Russ Henley had just as good a shot of winning that. So I just think it was a birdie fest. It was a putting contest birdie fest, which, okay, he putted good, and which Colin can do. But I don't know. I've kind of soured on Colin and his short game. I can't go there. Of course, Max Homa, to me, is getting to a point where I'm only going to play him at the courses that I think Max can win at. Sad to say, until he proves me wrong. Tommy Fleetwood, actually, I think is an interesting one from a betting perspective and from a DFS. This kind of, if it works out the way that it looks like it's going to, Tommy Fleetwood in a grudge match, I'm always excited about. Stefan Jaeger didn't really, he picked it up, I think, on Sunday, shot 8 under, but he was one of my picks for the Byron Nelson. And, it was kind of a slow start for him, but of course, elite irons, and also just can be terrible with the putter. You got Joaquin Niemann, elite ball striker, short game putter. Siwoo Kim, there's Sungjae Im I just talked about. Siwoo Kim also I didn't know. Byron Nelson, I didn't pick him, but man, he had a good chance to win that thing too. So good form for that tournament, right? Because it's Siwoo Kim. We don't know what he's going to bring the next day. Victor Hovland, I think his short game has gotten better. It is getting better. Now, I'm not saying he's a good fit for this venue so much per se as it could be around the greens, but I do like Victor Hovland just overall over Colin Morikawa. I fall in the Hovland camp. And then Jason Day, right, coming off that win that we've all been waiting for. And kind of funny enough, and I'll state it right now, if you watched my analysis, he was kind of getting, over the last 5 starts, it was getting worse and worse as his placings. But what I was kind of noticing, even though like his overall body of work, of course, has been getting better and better, and he's working his way up the world rankings. But I did not pick him. And literally I was saying, like, it seems a little bit like the Jason Day kind of steam is going downhill. And then he went out and won. I did hit him in a live bet kind of thing, but good for him. I'm just stating, hey, we all don't get everything right, and I'm definitely one of those. And so good on Jason Day. All right, let's move this thing along. It's taking a little too much time. Now we're going to look at 12 rounds. So that's the last 3 tournaments under the same model. Side note, again, no filters turned on for any of this. This is purely a recent form. If you see a guy start, it's because he is a live player, and so I have added one more on there. Of course, Brendan Steele. And the reason why I'm just saying that is because under recent form, we don't have recent form for Brendan Steele. Now, when he left us, the guy was a ball striking master, but couldn't make a putt or make a chip. So just side note. All right, let's go right through this. Tony Finau is coming up number 1 on my model after 12 rounds. Hideki, Scheffler, Hayden Buckley shows up quite a bit. So again, if this ends up being just a pure ball striking masterpiece, the guy does have that, but you could see where he kind of falls apart would be around the green. Sand saves. Putter, not too bad. Yeah, Xander, Siwoo, Jaeger, Cantlay, Neiman, Rahm, Russ Henley, my buddy. Ches Reavie, of course, don't discount or just take Brendan Steele off because it doesn't fit. He hasn't played the last 3 tournaments at the PGA. Mark Hubbard and Corey Connors, which I think is kind of interesting for here. Again, kind of falls in the Hovland camp of just, or even the Morikawa camp of just elite ball strikers. The short game can come bite them. But like I said, from a DFS perspective, where I see myself probably falling is going to be building a few different lineups because, like I said, we don't really know. I have an idea, but we don't really know how this is all going to shake out. I did do this for you guys. So if you are curious, this is recent form for the live guys with PGA. So when we had them on ShotLink data at the PGA Tour, I just wanted to throw these guys up here. We got 18 live players. And if you want to know against my model, all these guys' data, right, is going to be different. Especially when we get into some of these guys, like this guy, I have no clue who is, Saddam Kawachaka Wanga Wanga. Yeah, I have no idea. So like a lot of this is not going to be, but Dean Burmeister, right? I mean, has pretty up-to-date data. This Shiwan Kim is just brutal. Barnkheimer's pulled out. Sorry, I ended up kind of down here. But long story, if you want to know who fits the build that I was looking at least with the most recent data we had on these guys, Joaquin Niemann, I think Abe Answer, right? A guy that is good with the long irons. You know, nobody's talking about him. And I think it's kind of interesting because I don't think he's done a whole lot on live. But if you look at, of course, where he won at, I believe it's St. Jude, which is at the Colonial. I'm pretty sure. I might be wrong. That was here. I always get TPC Southwind mixed up with those two. But man, I think it's a good fit, especially at that kind of price tag. You got Brendan Steele, I mentioned, was just a ball striking master when he left us to go to live, but the putter just let him down. I got Lahiri, of course, showed up that 1 year. I don't know, what is it now? 2 years ago, 3 years ago at the Players. Gooch, I told you, good fit. Cam Smith, I mentioned his game has been trending back. If you go look at his, again, what do you take his live finishes for? But comparative to what we saw at the Masters, I think Cam Smith's going to be a better version. The only problem is I'm a little terrified of what that driver is going to be doing, and I don't think you can spray it all over here. You got Mito, who gave everybody a shot last year to win some money at the PGA Championship, then blew up on 18. Of course, it came down to a Will Z JT playoff where JT won that. You got HV3, which, again, if you're not really worried about short game, putting, you just want a good ball striker, he falls there. Paul Casey, I mean, if he never had the injury, and then we just haven't seen Paul Casey since the injury, to me, this is a really good Paul Casey event and course. But again, I didn't even look at his stats on the live. As far as I know, he has not done much. Of course, DJ won the Tulsa event. Patrick Reed showed up at the Masters. Of course, Koepka all scared us with winning a Masters. But of course, John Rahm kind of fell apart on that Sunday. But of course, Brooks has won a couple PGA Championships. Major Hunter feeling, I mean, I don't know why, but just when I think about it, I've thought, I think Brooks is going to be very chalky. And then because of what we saw at the Masters, and then watch him just come out and completely miss the cut. That would be interesting. DeChambeau has been changing the body back. If you've seen, he's, of course, definitely not hitting the weights anymore, getting back to the original DeChambeau. And I don't really know where his game's at. Again, I haven't seen anything worth a hoot. Thomas Peters, elite distance off the tee. Dean Burmeister also had some serious distance off the tee, if I remember correct, yeah. And that's it. And then Phil, right, won at Kiowa. Of course, just had that amazing out of nowhere again. I am a firm believer that the one course that Phil, no matter what form he's in, could go and have a good showing is Augusta. But I'm not saying I'll be very interested how that all shakes out from here because He did hit it pretty accurate off the tee, though, at Augusta. But Augusta is really hard to kind of figure that out because it's such wide fairways. And again, I've always felt like for lefties that you're hitting the natural kind of fade to hit the draw there, right? For us righties, that's a draw, but for him, it's just a natural fade. So I don't know. I'll be curious on how some of like the Phil and Brooks Koepka, because of what they saw, how much there'll be ownership on a DFS side. All right, then just one other thing I wanted to look at was because I can't, I'm not gonna pull up. Hey, this is what the guys have done. We have no history at this course that from a shot link data perspective, and anything that we could use, and then they'll go pull up a bunch of past PGA championships. That doesn't make any sense, but one thing that I was curious about was how these guys scored just in the recent majors we've had. Of course, that's the Open, the PGA Championship. We got the Masters, and what am I forgetting? The U.S. Open. Maybe I forgot that one. So I've kind of pulled up the last couple of years of those and then looked at just the things that we can get from that, because like Augusta, right, we can't get shot link data. The other ones we typically get shot link data. But I wanted to see fairways gain, green and reg, birdies, eagles, pars, and bogey avoidance. And just run that through and just see how it kind of, and funny enough, Colin Morikawa now, of course, we are, as I mentioned, he's got 2 wins, 2 majors. You got Scotty Scheffler, because won the Masters. You got Rahm, who's won the Masters. Cam Young, who's had a lot of top finishes in those events. Cam Smith won the Open. Jordan Spieth, as I mentioned, of course, he's going for the Grand Slam. But I don't know what you do with that. I mean, Xander, just shows up in these events over and over, but still has not gotten a major. Fitzy, who of course won the U.S. Open there at Brookline. Rory, I've actually got a kind of a breakdown on Rory and JT that we're going to talk a little more depth about. Victor shows up in like the final groups in a lot of these and just kind of falls apart on Sunday. Davis Riley, I have no idea. Okay, he's got 8 rounds. That's interesting. I just would have never in a million years thought of Davis Riley up on this. DJ Hideki, Cantlay, and then Shane Lowry. If you're just curious about just looking at the majors over the last couple of years from a scoring, fairways, greens, and reg, I mean, you can see a lot of it's on the birdies, eagles. I mean, that's the heavy. I just also wanted to throw in how they've done, on the fairway greens. So nothing to hang your hat on, but it's something that I'm looking at. All right, as always, we need elite ball strikers. So if you want to know what this is and feel that this is a larger data sample, I've taken the last 9 tournaments or 36 rounds these guys have played. Pure looking at ball striking. If you're new to that, it is off the tee and approach combined. You got Scotty Scheffler, number 1, Finau, Brendan Steele. Again, it should be highlighted, live player, but I told you guys when he left, he was one of the better ball strikers. Just no short game, no putting. Gary Woodland fits right in that camp too. Morikawa, Xander, Rahm, Hatton, Cantlay, Mito Pereira, Corey Connors, Hovland, Rory, Wyndham Clark, of course, coming off that Wells Fargo first victory on PGA Tour, and then Joaquin Niemann to round out the top 15 ball strikers in this field. Some of these guys like Niemann, Mito, Steele, and I think that's it. I didn't notice any others that are on the Live Tour. Again, that data is going to be a little older. Okay, now let's go look at the guys with the best approach. I call it the Iron Man, and I'm looking at now just the last 24 rounds, last 6 tournaments, and this is just purely approach. And the guys have been best with the irons: Rahm, Scheffler, Finau, Morikawa, Clark, Xander, Spieth, Fowler, David Lingmerth, who also can get very hot with a putter, Paul Casey, Seabez, Woodland, Homa, Pereira, and Corey Connors. Again, I should have probably highlighted Mito is a live guy, Paul Casey. I think that's it that I see in there. And just all I'm saying is that the data that this would pull is definitely going to be older, where these guys is going to be a much more recent, the last probably 6-7 tournaments we've watched. And then to look at specifically that 200 plus number that I think is going to be crucial to success, you got Rahm, Woodland, Finau, Tom Hoagie, HV3, a live guy, Neiman, a live guy, DJ, a live guy. You got Reeve, Burmeister, Hovland, DeChambeau, Scott, of course, DeChambeau, live guy, Kitayama, Minwoo Lee. He was quite the bust. And I said, off tangent, back to the Byron Nelson. He was my one pick that I was kind of like, well, I think it's going to be low ownership, but is not exactly who I'm looking, or wasn't confident with that pick, and it come to pass that he didn't make the cut. Rory McIlroy and Patrick Cantlay. So really when I pulled this up, there was so many guys on the live that popped in here that I wanted to then, of course, go do the live breakdown. So you had that. And hence, that's why I also did this. So I removed all the live guys, reran this for that 200 plus, and then here you go. So you got to see the old data with the guys, how they did it 200 plus, prior to leaving the PGA Tour. And now you get to see, removing those guys, who's the best from 200 out with recent data. That'd be Rahm, Woodland, Finau, Hoagie, Reeve. Hovland, Reeve is an interesting play here too. Again, a guy that really hits a lot of fairways. I didn't even know he was in the field. Hovland, Scott, Kitayama, Lee, Minwoo Lee, Cantlay, Rory, Adam Svensson. We all know is very good with the irons. Xander Schauffele, Cameron Young, and Danny Willett, who's had a few pop-ups here, and of course had a chance to win the Fortinet until he three-putted, and of course Homa chipped in, and that's where Homa won to kick off the kind of the fall, well, to kick off the 2023 season technically, but which falls in the fall. Okay. All right. Now the next thing that I said is going to be crucial, I think, and I think this is something you want to note, is around the green and sand saves. And if you want to know just around the green over the past 36 rounds, that'd be 9 tournaments. Number 1 would be Brendan Todd, Matt Kuchar, Benny Griffin, JT, Jimmy Walker, Chris Kirk, Taylor Gooch, Fleetwood, M, Scheffler, Steve Alcorn, right? He plays on the Champions Tour, has won a ton over there. That's just interesting. Mackenzie Hu, Patrick Reed, of course, Hideki, and Jason Day. So that's just looking at around the green. Now, what I think is more interesting for me is the guys that have done really good out of the sand. And Matty Kuchar has led everybody out of here. And I'm going to let you know right now, I've already thrown a bet, and you can get him at 250 to 1. I believe that was a points bet that I got that. And really, the more that I started to see this course, like I said, I've been back and forth between, do I want, elite ball strikers with not the greatest around the green, or do I want guys that I know hit fairways, good with a long approach, and are ridiculous with the puttering around the green? And I kind of fell on that. So for 250 to 1, why not? We've had some crazy PGA out of nowhere wins, hints, and Kuchar's actually in a billion times better form than Phil the Thrill when he won the PGA. So long story short, that's a little early bet information. But Ben Griffin, McNeely, Soo Kim, Rose Day, Patrick Rogers, kind of shocking. That's kind of odd. He must have chipped a few in out of the sand. Brendan Todd, Spieth, Reed Willett, Andrew Putnam, Chris Kirk, Finau, and Gooch are your top sand players. So just side note. And then always we're on bent green, so why not look at who's really good. And again, we got to remember, we don't see a lot of bent in heaven. I think the Masters Augusta is the last bent greens we've seen for a while. But no shocker, as I mentioned, if you go like quite a few events that happen in the FedEx Cup event, like the BMW, typically fall on bent. But Patrick Cantlay, Seabass, McNeely, Keimer, not in the field. Hosler anymore with Drew, whatever. Hosler, Thorborn, Olsen, Alex Noren, the Toddster, Homa, Rogers, Rory, the Burns, Lucas Hebert, even though it's just Herbert, I know. Harris English, Rose are your guys that have been leading. And of course, it makes sense. A lot of these guys are just good putters no matter what surface. You put them on typically like Bermuda Burns, Brendan Todd usually shows up on Bermuda. Matt McNeely, literally him, and as I mentioned, and Tyler Montgomery. The only kind of things they've been doing this year is mostly putting. All right, on the comp course side, this is one of those where I think you can make an argument for like Colonial or Harbor Town, but, it doesn't really have the length. It doesn't have the rough. And so really I just said, I'm just going to go with the mini majors. We get good stroke gain data from these. Of course, Memorial has bent greens. I think is the best comp course, my own personal opinion. I feel like the fairway's a little wider, but if you get off the fairways there, the rough is typically rough. I mean, Jack Nicklaus does not like you coming to his course and putting up, big scores. So it is always going to be a huge test. I'll never forget when they had the Workday event the week before the Memorial, and I think it was like Finau and Rahm just like was tearing that course apart, but the rough was mowed and like the conditions were not. And then literally it was the next weekend and that course played night and day. Now I also remember that wind came up for the actual Memorial tournament, but even how they set that course, so just a week of difference, or whatever, 7-8 days. Of course, you got the Genesis at the Riv, and then where we just saw Quail Hollow for Wells Fargo. So I just pulled those. That, like I said, it's where we get stroke gain data. It's the toughest courses. You could throw Bay Hill in there, but I don't know, I just don't feel like that's even close remotely to what this course, where I feel like these courses, especially I guess Quail and Murfield Village, I think it would be the closest. And then, but I also could see the Colonial Harbor Town kind of thing. Okay, enough said. If you're curious, over the last 6 tournaments, 24 rounds, funny enough, Morikawa, Rahm, Xander, Scheffler, Homa, Hovland, Casey, Starr, that's older data. Duffner actually pulled out, which is kind of interesting. Patrick Cantlay, JT, Rory, Connors, Fleetwood, Reeve, McIntyre, Steele, again, Live Data, and then Tom Kim. So you saw, I think I pulled 17 guys in because 2 of these guys, again, are older. Also, Jason Duffner has withdrew for the tournament. Okay, so a topic that I thought we just, some information again. We got to look at Rory and I think JT are kind of both interesting, right? And so there's just some things that I was thinking about. So they actually shared this on a golf channel. So I thought, hey, I'm going to share this with you guys. So if we look back at kind of Rory's career just at the majors, and if you look at, of course, his first 7 years, he had 25 starts in majors. He had 4 wins, 7 top 5s. We know all those top 10s. He had 10 of those. If we look at his past 8 years, where he has 31 starts, of course, no wins. So his last one was the PGA victory at Valhalla. Of course, he also won a PGA Championship at Kiowa, where I think he won by like 8 strokes, just went nuts. He's had 9 top 5s and 17 top 10s. So again, solid, but as we all know, it's typically kind of how Rory gets off to his, first rounds, what typically happens. So then if you wanted to look at this and I'm just showing this data purely just for your own, if you're thinking about betting Rory or playing Rory, you have it. So at the Masters, right, he's had 9 starts. He's had 6 top 10s. Of course, he had that, not this year, but the previous, kind of backed into that second place. Shot an amazing Sunday round. I'm not taking anything away from him, but he was never in contention. He's had 8 PGA starts. He's had 2 top 10s. He did lead last year, the first round, if you don't remember that, at Southern Hills. Almost said TPC Southwind. Southern Hills. U.S. Open, he's had 8 starts. He's had 5 top 10s. He's never led. And again, this is why I'm showing this. So just was, led different. And that's a lot what I think a lot of people think is maybe is what I've seen with Rory. The step gets quicker, his confidence, the chest gets out when he's leading at any time, and watch out when he's leading. Again, back to the Kiowa thing. And then, of course, the Open, 6 starts, 4 top 10s, and he led again in 2022 after the 3rd round. We remember that, where he went in and it looked like it was kind of his tournament to lose. Some people said he was in neutral. I don't think he was in neutral. I think he was playing the course, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Cam Smith just torched that day. And I think it was what he shot. I don't remember, but he shot 8 under, something crazy at the old course. So anyways, that's just kind of a breakdown from the starts perspective. And then if you want to understand how he's been doing from a pure stroking categories, I thought this was kind of interesting and comparing to the last 5 season. Of course, putting, he's been down, and he's ranked 168 right now, where over the last 5 seasons, he was a plus. Not much, but 0.219 plus. Driving distance, he's first, so he's definitely gained distance this season versus the last 5. But then accuracy, he's at 192 as in ranking in the PGA versus, so not super accurate. So he's hitting 50%, which I don't, a lot of courses they play, I don't think that's a big deal. I think in this course, it's going to be a bit of a big deal, where he was almost 60% over the last 5 seasons. Again, that's combined over the last 5 seasons. Green and reg fallen a bit. And then also birdie average, I think, which is probably a little more interesting, where, of course, typically on average over the last 5 seasons, he's gained almost 4.5 birdies per round, where he's at 3.8. So I think that comes back to that putter. And so where I was going with that, I actually had some other notes. So here's the 2 sides of Rory. The way I look at it is, of course, he's, missed the cut at the Players, missed the cut at the Masters. We thought he was going to do great at Wells Fargo, where he's owned it, won a couple times, maybe 3 times, but typically that's his playground. He just, owns that course, and he ended up, I think, making the cut on the number. It ended up like somewhere in the 40th. I mean, nothing. I was still playing him in Showdown on, Saturday, Sunday, thinking he was just going to have his round that we typically see out of Rory, and it just never happened. Of course, he changed the putter back to the mallet. He also changed his wedges. He was a disaster with the irons. There's all that. And then he's actually a member at this course at Oak Hill. His wife and in-laws are from this area. From my understanding, he spent a ton of time playing this course during the COVID, when it was kind of like nothing else to do. So he knows and has played this course, I would have to guess, more than anybody else that's out here under the new, design or the renovation. So there you go. So where I was putting this is, I guess it's going to come down to ownership and where you think. But I mean, we get so focused on what is going on and what's been going on the last month or so, and forget that how good these guys are. And at any time, it can just switch like literally just click, and Rory's Rory. So yeah, that's something I guess we just got to think about. But I just wanted to give you all that information if you did not know. about the local ties and him, how much he's probably played this track. I know he's played it quite a bit, but you got that versus recent. And then also the last thing I'll state is you got his presser that he kind of came out and said, "Hey, I've kind of reevaluated." Like he took that mental break, right? He missed the RBC Heritage and went and took that 2 weeks off, whatever it was, and before I believe before Wells Fargo. And how I took out of his little on the fly presser was, you know what, I was putting too much worry and thought into this. The game's consumed me. I need to kind of reprioritize a little bit more towards family and not get so hung up on this. So what it kind of tells me is, kind of a laissez-faire approach now, and I don't know what that means. So that's one more part I'll throw in there. Okay, let's talk just a little JT real fast. Nothing big on him, but the one thing, of course, the putter has been the huge thing. But what we always typically think of JT is, right, best iron player, ridiculous from 100 yards, 125 in. It just kind of shows you his average between 18 and 2022. Of course, he's also his two majors are PGA victories, one at Quail Hollow, 2017, and then you've got, of course, last year coming from behind 8 strokes at one time to win at Southern Hills. Where he typically gains almost a stroke on the field with his irons and his green and reg. So that's tailed off a little bit this season. 0.5 versus, almost a full stroke. And his green and regs, hence, is a little less. But this is why I kind of want to pull this up. If you don't remember, if you forgot, he implemented this aim point system. And so I guess he brought the guy in who actually invented it to work with him quite a bit. I think the first time he put it into play was at Quail, which I will pull up his putting stats here in a second so we can go take a look. But I just wanted to bring that to your attention that this was the one major chink in his armor this year. And what he said is that he feels more confident now, that he knows why he misses putts. Before it was like, he didn't really know, it was more on clarity. So this is another thing, right? The narrative of, hey, he wins PGA championships. That's, what he does. The guy's elite all around, except for what's been going on with the putter. Crazy short game. And so let's go take a look at this. So what we want to look at here is over to the right. This is his strokes gained all the way back to starting of the FedEx Cup. I wanted to pull since 2022 back. Gives us a nice sample. That's 14 events. He's literally only gained with the putter 4 of 14 events. Playing up the Genesis where he struggled kind of ball striking, but gained almost 5 strokes with the putter, which you will see that typically if you're crazy with the irons, you're not going to gain a ton with the putter because if you're gaining that much strokes, you're putting it within 5-10 feet. But the Wells Fargo, after he put that method in, he gained almost a stroke and a half. So that's kind of the big thing I was trying to point out to you is by putting this aim point method in, if he starts getting confident and can do what he's doing here, the ball striking, watch out. And again, these results, if you look at definitely not what he said, he was actually, I think, felt like he was in a slump somewhere around this period. It's really only a good showing that really sticks out in my mind for me is the waste management. The Tour Championship, you got 38 guys, 40 guys. I don't really weigh that very heavy. The BMW is a little shocking, right? Because you've only got 70 guys that even play in that. So that's a really bad result. The Players where he won the year before, I think we were all expecting, but he lost 5 strokes with the putter. Hence why he probably went and, implemented this. Okay, with all that said, right now this is my betting card. And it's a little goofy because some of these bets I put in before I did all the knowledge, I just kind of went through and what I knew of the course prior. And some of them, so let's see, I can kind of pick them out. So like the Joaquin Neiman's, I've got a way better number than that 70 to 1. I believe it's like 110 or something like that. Keegan Bradley was like 150. I think Gooch was at 100. So some of the ball strikers you're going to see that, maybe not the greatest short game, because I thought that was a way until I understood the rough and what they did with these greens and so forth. I still don't have telling you not to bet that at those numbers. I think they're still good numbers. But then where I started to kind of change, of course, I got Xander and Cantlay. I think at 22 to 1, both of those guys were the same. The odds have dropped a bit. And I actually like both of those guys, even from a kind of starting from a DFS side from that, those guys. And then Kuchar, I mentioned already, 250 to 1. You can get him at PointsBet. Cam Smith, at one time, I got him at 50 to 1, but he's dropped a little bit. But still, it's all about of course, the driver. And I just think everything else, the irons around the green and putter, he can definitely help there. And then Harris English, I got at 250 to 1. Funny enough, his number has been dropping recently. And I think it's just his game could all around fit well. I always put him in a pretty good ball striker camp and also has a pretty good short game and putter. And we've seen that with some recent decent, finishes. I've been talking about Harris English a ton And of course, just getting over that hip injury. All right, with that said, that is going to be my preview show. And then I'm going to get my pick show right after this out for you guys. But as always, do me the honor and click that like button, share with anybody else. If you're not a subscriber, subscribe, and then follow me on Twitter at DFS Golf Guru for all the information regarding the tournaments or anything about golf that you need to be updated on. All right, guys, I got to go finish now the pick show, get that out for you guys, and I'll talk to you later. Take care.